This is a one-speaker meeting. Please welcome our speaker tonight. The speaker is Linda.
My name is Linda, and I am an alcoholic. Oh, goodness. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Dave, for telling Michelle about me. Thanks, Alcoholics Anonymous, for giving me a life. Welcome to the new people. We're glad you're here. You might not be glad you're here, but we're glad you're here, because I wasn't glad I was here when I was new. And congratulations to the Chip Dakers and happy birthday. I was really hoping there'd be more birthdays. I love to listen to you guys. My sobriety date is August 22nd, 1985. I'm 24 years sober. It's unbelievable that I'm sober today, let alone have been consistently sober for 24 years. Oh my goodness, I am so grateful. Lately I've been my temperament isn't sort of one in gratitude. I don't have that. I was told that I was sort of an ingrate growing up. And so for me to have this kind of love and affection for Alcoholics Anonymous, this extraordinary connection to Alcoholics Anonymous, all these years later, and it grows for me, it's just Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's what's possible here. So the reason I say to the newcomers, you might not be glad you're here, the reason I say that from experience is that I didn't know what was going on here when I was new. I mean, I knew I had to be here, but I didn't know what was going on. First of all, I'm nocturnal, and although I showed up to a job during the day, before I got sober, the idea of being in bright lit rooms at night with people asking me how I was just terrifying. And the whole idea of being sober and being around people was terrifying. The whole idea of not having a drink was terrifying. The whole idea of living without a pocket full of narcotics was terrifying. So I'm glad you're here because I know it's possible for you and for your life, and because it's happened to me. I thought I was only going to have to come and talk for 20, 25 minutes. And when Dave said no till 10 of, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I started to pray to this God that I don't always understand to share something that somebody needs to hear. I know it's not going to be the room tonight necessarily, but it is, I just try and ask this power that I have found here but don't understand to help me carry this message in a way that I was able to understand it. I love to drink alcohol. I love to drink. I started drinking Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill and Annie Green Springs. And if you drink it, you throw it up. I did a lot of throwing up, but fortunately I only drank it for a year and a half, and I found vodka really soon. Yeah, vodka's really great. I love vodka. I love ice cold vodka in a bottle in the freezer in chilled glasses. That's how I like to drink vodka. But if there aren't glasses, that's okay. And if it's not chilled, that's okay too. I just love what vodka does for me. By nature, I have a very busy mind. It doesn't shut up ever. I have a very nervous disposition. I'm actually holding onto the podium tonight. I feel very nervous tonight. By nature, I have a nervous disposition. And on a good day, my lens is kind of messed up. On a good day, my lens is messed up. It is riddled in fear, anxiety, and anger. And so when I drink alcohol, it just shuts that off. I love to drink alcohol. I particularly love to drink alcohol with Quaaludes, Placidils, Reds, Valium, maybe a little angel dust. And, I love to combine, as the Big Book talks about, high-powered sedatives. I like to be out, pretty much, which is kind of a paradox because I was, sort of the life of the party. Come on, let's have another margarita. Come on, let's go to another bar. I'm from LA. I drank in the 70s and the 80s, and it was just a lot of fun. I like danger. I like dangerous things. I've got scars on my legs to prove doing stupid, dangerous things. And, you know, I come from a fairly good home. It's very neurotic. There's no drinking in it. There's no drug addiction. The women in my family vacuum away their nervousness and anxiety. I was sober about 2 years and at somebody's house in Alcoholics Anonymous before I realized that people actually, the normal thing to do is kind of sit and talk to somebody face to face without a vacuum going. I still love to vacuum. I live in an old house, and it's riddled, the garage is riddled with spider webs and stuff, and I actually had a friend come over today with a industrial vac. I got so excited. I don't know what it is, you know? It's like something's a mess, and then you can use this piece of a vibrator, a big piece of equipment. That's 27 years of sobriety over there. I don't know, you know, I'm a little warped, you know. The 12 and 12 in the first step says that I have warped my mind, you know, with destructive drinking. And, you know, I think my mind was a bit warped before I ever took a drink. I was, you know, I had this family, and, you know, it was weird. As far as I was concerned, this family was weird. Everybody was educated, but nobody was talking about anything. People traveled, nobody talked about where they went. People bought new things, but nobody was talking about it. It was like this weird, we'd sit at these family dinners, and I would think, why isn't anybody talking? You know, I was this kid, I was energetic, you know, I was reading, and I wanted to talk about these things, and, you know, when I came into AA and you guys were talking about family dinners and how you'd have fights and throw things, and at Thanksgiving, you know, the potatoes wound up here, I thought, wow, that must have been, I mean, I know you described it as though it was really painful, but to me it sounded very exciting, given that where I came from, nothing really ever happened. So I always wanted something to happen. That's the bottom line. I wanted something to happen. I wanted to get somewhere. I wanted to be somewhere. I didn't really know where I wanted to be. I don't know where I wanted to get. I was raised in the Valley. I wanted to get to Hollywood. I knew that if I got to Hollywood, something would happen, and I got to Hollywood, and of course, everything happens in Hollywood. And, you know, at that time, I could find anything I wanted, and you know, I drank and used for 10 years. That's the bottom line to my story. I love to drink alcohol. I love to mix it with high-powered sedatives. I hate to smoke grass, and I smoked tons of it. I have no idea why. You know, and it was very evident to me when I was very young that I had something going on. I started seeing therapists really young because I thought there was something wrong with me, and I wanted to get some kind of agreement that there was something wrong with me. And they thought I was fine, which, you know, I don't know if I was fooling them or that gives us the state of therapists at that time. I don't know, but, you know, I knew something was wrong. And so what I started to do is I started running. You know, I used to run 6 miles a day, and I would burn out all this energy, and it did calm me down temporarily. I really wasn't interested in, like, doing it for endorphins or anything, but the greatest cigarette of my day was right after a 6-mile run. If anybody smokes or smokes or did, it was just the greatest, you know. And then I would go drink in bars and clubs in LA, and you know, so I was really fit on one hand, and I was getting fit, and I had to be fit because I was just sort of out of my mind, but I didn't really know, you know, what was wrong. I knew something was wrong. I knew that the way my peers looked at life was very different than mine. And I would, you know, sort of in AA we say judging my insides by your outsides, but it seemed very evident to me that there was something very seriously wrong with me. And what that set up was this extreme self-obsession. I was this constant, you know, inward looking, this constant sense of feeling different, being different, comparing myself. My parents are divorced. I'm around all these kids who aren't. I mean, it really set up this me versus them sense in my life. And, you know, I don't know where any of this come from, or I didn't know where any of it came from until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. So, I mean, alcohol just absolutely worked for me. It allowed me, so on the one hand, I was this really terrified person, and I was able to sort of go out into the world, and I would drink, and I was able to just feel nothing, pretty much. I really wasn't interested in feeling anything. I'm not somebody who drank to feel because of my feelings. When you start drinking it, I was a kid when I started drinking, really 13, 14, something like that. It wasn't like I was feeling deep feelings. But I was neurotic, and I was smart, and I had this mind that never stopped. And I'm so grateful that when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, he told me about the disease of alcoholism, because I didn't know what was wrong with me, and nobody knew what was wrong with me. And I didn't know what was wrong with me, and my brother, who was getting a degree in psychology from Cal State Northridge, he didn't know what was wrong with me, but he decided to help me find a therapist. And that was, when I started the Chapter 3 with therapists to try and figure out what was wrong with me. And I feel like if I talk faster, the time will move faster, but that just inundates you with more words. I don't speak much anymore, and coupled with having moved to Glendale a year and a half ago, I really feel like I've flown in from another state. Anybody who's spent any time in Glendale, it's very, very weird. It's just very different anyway. I'm so glad I'm here. So I drank until I couldn't anymore. I drank in 1985. I wasn't doing anything different than I'd been doing in 1975, except drinking and trying to, I really never thought I was going to live past the age of 25. There wasn't like a big plan for Linda's life. There wasn't like, I wasn't the kind of person that there was a big plan for. And the reason that there wasn't a big plan for, because I did very dangerous things. And so there wasn't really a big plan, because it wasn't really going to be like, nobody was really banking on me staying alive. When you overdose or get on the back of motorcycles with strangers in shorts and a t-shirt and no boots and lay it down, there's not a big plan that somebody's, you're going to live past the age of 25. And I did that all the time. So I wasn't doing anything in 1985 except drinking. I was working at this little studio or this little production company out in Studio City. And a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous was posted in the lunchroom, AA meeting. And I don't know why I went. And if you're here tonight and you don't know why you're here, you don't know how you got here, you don't know what you're doing here, someone tricked you into being here, I just really want to welcome you and invite you to keep coming back. I don't know why I went into that meeting, but it was a little meeting. People had started because they were working pretty long hours on these shows we were all working on. And people talked the language of the heart. They were talking about being so angry that the best they could do was go to a meeting, show up for work, not pick up any sharp objects, and, call their sponsor. And I'm like thinking, wow, these are some pretty successful people who are really speaking from the heart, people who are talking about fear, people who are talking about being anxious in their skin, and they were grateful there was a meeting in the middle of the day. And I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what was going on. But what happened for me is what I call resonance. I felt like there was something going on here. Because what happened for me here is that you didn't tell me about Linda. You told me about you. In fact, I wondered at one point when you were going to shut up long enough to where I could get a word in. Now, that's alcoholism for me, because I didn't want to say anything. I wanted to be really small, and I didn't really want to, I was really terrified. Here I am in this meeting, and people invited me to come back. So I went to that meeting on Tuesday, for a couple weeks, because I didn't know, in my day, we didn't have the internet. So I didn't know there were, 2,600 meetings a week in the greater Los Angeles area. So I went to that little Tuesday meeting, and there was a guy there that got in my face. He was very successful. He was on one of the biggest TV shows at the time in 1985. He was sober a couple years. He had a very big life. He had a home here. He had a home in Palm Springs. He had a girlfriend. He was well-liked, respected among his peers. You know, he had everything, and he got in my face, and he said, "Kid, if you don't work this program like your life depends on it, you're going to drink and die." And what it felt like for me was somebody reached down inside of me and pulled out something that I was looking for, therapists or somebody to pull up. But it was one drunk talking to me. And I knew that he understood. I knew that he understood that I was dying of something or struggling with something, but I didn't have words to know what it was. And they invited me to go to Radford, which was down the street, and I started going to Radford, the old 4343. And I learned about the disease of alcoholism. And I'm so grateful in my first year I learned about the disease of alcoholism. Because if I didn't know what I was up against, I would have just blown out of these rooms. I mean, I really, you know, the big book describes alcohol as, I needed something with depth and weight. You know, I needed something with depth and weight. That's how I drank. And when they explained to me that they had a physical allergy, and it invited me to look at my own, that when I take alcohol in my system, it sets up this allergy and I want more. And when I don't have any alcohol in my system, I've got this mind riddled with obsessions. And it doesn't stop. And they said, if you're like me, you might be alcoholic. And I was, a couple weeks sober. By that time, alcohol had completely stopped working. They invited me to keep coming back. I couldn't get drunk and I couldn't get sober. And if I knew my last drink, if I knew what my last drink was going to be, that it was going to be my last drink, it would have been a whole lot sexier than a glass of wine with my grandmother at the fish house in Venice. I had been weeks off drinking, and then I went with her, and we were really, really close. She was just the most beautiful, sweetest woman in the world. And we went out there to have supper one night, and I remember being very keyed up, and I didn't know it was because I hadn't had a drink in a couple weeks. I didn't know anything about what was going on with my condition, and I ordered a glass of wine, and it didn't take the edge off. And there was in terms of the disease, I'm not smart, and it was the first time that something registered, and what registered was, it's up. Like, party's over, the gig is up. It was like I walked through a door, the door closed, and I never walked back through it. I went back to that meeting, and I told them that I had had this drink, and I knew that it was done. And then, if you're like me, the fun really starts when you stop drinking. I hear a lot of newcomers say, well, I haven't had a drink in 6 months. I thought it was going to get better. Well, I'm so grateful that they told me that when you have alcoholism, the party really starts when you're not drinking. They told me, Linda, now that you're not treating your alcoholism with alcohol and you're left with the obsessions of the mind, this is where Alcoholics Anonymous might help you. And I was so grateful that they explained the disease, that this is where Alcoholics Anonymous came in for me. And, I saw that I was riddled with obsessions. I saw that I was struggling with 100 forms of fear early on. And yet I couldn't do anything. Nothing affected a change. I would go to meetings, and I'd be really tense in meetings. I'd go to meetings, and I'd be judging the speaker. I couldn't wait to get there, and as soon as the speaker started, I'd be judging the speaker. Then when the speaker ended, I'd panic because I had to go back in my car and be alone with Linda. And I'd drive all over the city to meetings, and I'd think, I wonder how long it is before I just drive off a cliff. That was really it wasn't like I was hurting because I wanted to die. I was just I saw what I was up against. I saw the hopelessness of alcoholism. And I'm really grateful that I wasn't just left there. I'm really grateful that people talked about praying to a power greater than myself. I'm really grateful that I was so sick that I was willing to do anything. I'm so grateful that I was willing to pray to this power greater than myself. Help. Can you help me? Can you restore me to sanity? Can you take away this rage? Can you take away this sickness? Another moment They invited me to pray to this power in the moment. And I was willing. What's so extraordinary about that experience for me is that I was an absolutely incorrigible kid. You could not tell me anything. You couldn't show me anything. You couldn't talk me into anything. I mean, I knew it all. I hated grown-ups. I hated people taller than me. I hated adults. I was this kid who didn't trust, I didn't like grown-ups. I grew up with a lot of grown-ups, very proper people in my family who didn't say anything at dinners, and so I didn't like grown-ups. And so I was so grateful in AA that you just shared your story with me. And in my first year, my life got unbelievable. It just changed so much. My life changed in a way that you said it would. It changed a lot on the outside my first year. I wish the last 23 have changed as fast as that first year changed. But, I just started doing what was suggested, and I was able to live comfortably without having to take a drink. And for me, I was willing to do that. Like, if that was as good as it was going to get, it was okay. I didn't come in here with a big laundry list of, I need to find him and I want a house on the hill. Like, I didn't have a laundry list. I thought that if I can live in a way and not die and destroy myself and continue to hurt people in the process, it's good enough. That lasted about 10 years. My first 5 years was so difficult because it was really abandoning these ideas that I had had. And what my sobriety looks like, and has for the last several years, well, I'll back up. It was just enough for me to be here. I mean, I didn't really understand what you meant. I was hostile for like 3 years. People would say, "How are you?" And I'd have to go home and call my sponsor and say, "Janice in the meeting said, 'How are you?'" And she said, "What did you say?" And I said, "I walked away." And she said, "Why?" And I said, "Because I didn't know what she meant." "What did she mean?" She said, "Linda, she didn't mean anything." Then I'd say, "Well, Dean from Saturday night said, 'Keep coming back.'" So I put on my best leathers. It was 1985, and I showed up on Saturday night, 6.5 months sober. And Dean wasn't at that meeting that Saturday night. And I'm looking around for Dean because Dean told me to keep coming back. And this was the lens I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous with. And my sponsor had to sit me down and say, "Linda, people don't really mean anything." Dean, with his keep coming back, he meant he sees how sick you are, she said. And he just means he wants you to keep coming back so you can get well. He didn't mean like he wants you. I'm like, oh. And Janice, who's asking like, "How are you?" She's doing that because her sponsor probably said, "Get out of yourself, Janice, and stop thinking about your, love life and ask a newcomer, sicker than you, how they are." I'd be like, oh. I didn't know what was going on here. You know what I mean? People give me their cards, and I throw them away in front, like, what? Like, what are we going to talk about? Like, I had no idea how to do, like, what? You remember.
Very well.
Good Lord. Mickey called me one time. I was like 2.5 years sober. He said, "What are you doing?" And I said, it was like a Sunday afternoon. It was really beautiful outside, and I lived like what a lot of us in our first 5 years live in, really dark, little place, curtains drawn. I'd probably gone out for a run that day and probably come back and shut the curtains. I was like 2.5 years sober. He's like, "Be ready in 40 minutes. We're coming to get you." And Mickey shows up with this old station wagon. Even though if they make them anymore, you never see them anymore. This white station wagon, and there's like all these girls in the car, and off we go to this picnic. And I am, I am out of my mind at this point. Like, I see people who are 2 years sober and they're going to stuff and they're doing stuff and they're normal. I wasn't normal. I didn't know what the hell was going on. What am I supposed to do at this picnic? It's daylight with all these sober people. It's not a meeting, you know. And, you know, he puts this stuff, and he knew how sick we were. You know, he was like, no, I couldn't have been. Yeah, you were a couple years sober. Maybe I was in my first year. I don't know, whatever it was. He puts out these blankets and it was packed. You know, I could go to concerts because it was dark and we were smoking pot with people, but like daylight with sober people, and you know, I don't know. He's like, grab a hamburger and like keep your mouth shut or something. You know what I mean? It's like, just be here. Just learn to be here. Just get on the planet. Just get outside. You know, I mean, it just really had to be built up from the ground up. I didn't know how to do anything, and you know, it's really been a slow working process for me, thawing out, turning into a person. You know. I had a pretty serious anger problem most of my sobriety. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to talk about, you know. It seems to help people. I've been talking about it a lot lately. I didn't know how serious until nicotine got removed when I was 18 years sober, and then the party really started for me. Because I wasn't a heavy smoker and I've been an athlete all my life, and so I didn't really think that smoking 3 to 8 cigarettes a day was addiction, you know, but smoking 3 to 8 cigarettes a day is managing something, and I didn't know that. And so I was keeping a lid on something that needed to kind of come up. And nicotine got removed when I was 18 years sober. I had to go to Nicotine Anonymous, and people thought it was hilarious. Like, there's these people in Nicotine Anonymous who are like, you know, in their first 5 or 10 years sober, and I'm 18 years sober, and I'm totally out of my mind. But one more time I had to surrender, and one more time I had to just expose what was coming out of me, and one more time I couldn't save my ass and my face at the same time. And one more time I had to talk about what was really going on. And one more time I was faced with this terror. And one more time I was faced with this kind of fear. And I'd call people in again and say, I don't understand what's going on. I said, well, it's got to come out, you know. And I was just freaked out again. And, you know, I walked through that. And a couple years later, I got a job, and I thought it was like really going to change the course of part of my career, and I dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's, and really thought this was going to launch me into another direction. And I got a job to go to Louisiana, you know, and I was in, you know, the 2 hurricanes there, and, you know, I was in meetings all the time, and people were drinking and using and going out of their minds, and it was just one of the strangest experiences of my life. And I stayed sober through it, and I went to meetings, and I tried to do what I could in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I showed up. And it's so hard for me to talk about that time because it was just really horrible to see, obviously. And Alcoholics Anonymous has been everywhere I've been. It's just been everywhere, these pockets of AA. And, you know, the last couple of years, this anger stuff, the really big stuff, I moved to Glendale a year and a half ago, and I had a really comfortable life in LA. I didn't know how controlled it was. I didn't know how familiar it was. And then I moved to Glendale, and I just didn't know anything. I'd get lost driving around Glendale. I'd be like, where am I? I should have bought a GPS, but, you know, I don't think in those ways. I think that I'll just drive around. And you know, I got lost in the avenues one night. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. And, you know, and I said a prayer, and I asked God to, you know, keep me safe. And I want to talk about this power that I found here because it's been the mainstay of my life, and it's been, it's changed, and I have 2 minutes to talk about it. You know, when I was new and they said, get a God or die, okay, I didn't have any objection to that. I had poured enough alcohol in my system to kill myself. I had combined it with high-powered sedatives. You know, it wasn't offensive to me to, like, get a God or die. I mean, get a God. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know what prayer meant. I didn't know what it was going to look like. But my very first experience with a power greater than myself was when I was 90 days sober, and I felt like I was electric. I felt like somebody had plugged me in, and I couldn't calm down. And my sponsor suggested, you know, Linda, you're one of the sicker ones. You might get on your knees. People that are sick, like us, she said, we need to get on our knees. okay, I'll get on my knees. And I started talking out loud to this power, and I said, I don't know where you are or what you are, but I need some help here. Like I've just been to a meeting, I've already vacuumed, cleaned my house, done everything, you know, the next meeting isn't for a couple of hours. Like, I really need something to happen here now. Like, you know, and I remember being on my knees, I remember, you know, and I calmed down. And I thought, oh, that's unusual. So I calmed down. And that became my blueprint for searching for this power, to change my life, to change my lens. Oh, good, time's up. So I'll just finish this thought. So just to change how I am in the moment. And now how it's working for me day in and day out is, God, can you help me right now? As in, right now. Not as in, I got to go home and write inventory about that son of a gun that I'm pissed off about. As in, God, can you help me right here, right now? And for anyone who's struggling with this power, I invite you to borrow mine. And anyone who's struggling with something really big, there's people in here I know that are struggling. A lot of us are unemployed, kid stuff, cancer, my mom's sick. To just invite you right now to ask this power for help right now, as in, relieve me of this burden, and to see what happens. Thank you.